Next panel is a discussion on recapitalizing Earth's treasury with regenerative economics. And we have people here from Moss Earth, Regen Network, Wildchain, Project Wren. And Amy Slawson, my dear colleague at cLabs, is going to be the moderator. Okay? She's a product manager at cLabs, and she focuses a lot on dev experience. Amy, welcome to the stage.
Well, thanks, Fernando. Like you mentioned, I'm Amy. I am a partner at cLabs. Just really excited and grateful to be here, especially following that really inspiring talk from Charles Eisenstein and Sep, just two amazing thinkers and leaders in the space. And also as well, just sharing the space with some amazing panelists that we're going to chat with today that have really dedicated their lives' work to environmental regeneration. And it's a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. Before we start, I just want to tie it back to Celo's mission, which is to build a financial system that creates the conditions for prosperity for everyone. And to me, when I think about this, this mission really falls short if that prosperity comes at the expense of our planet. Yesterday, I was sitting eating chocolate, which is one of my favorite desserts, and I opened up the candy bar wrapper, and there was a not so fun fact inside, which said a football field of rainforest is destroyed every second, either due to logging or to ranching. And I think it's really common for us as individuals to read stats like these and feel really powerless as individuals. But collectively, we could do so much more. And one of those tools in our toolbox, powers that we have, is economics and how that can really change and shape and drive people to collectively drive toward change. It has the power to collectively, or to represent what we collectively value as a society, and the opportunity to incentivize behaviors that align with what is best for humanity and the planet. So super thrilled to be here and have the opportunity to pick the brains of a lot of individuals who are actually dedicating their work to solving these problems, and specifically jumping into how economics plays a role, perhaps an essential role in how we not only sustaining but more so regenerating our environment. So the panel today includes, we have Luis from Moss, Florian from Wildchain, Ben from Project Wren, and Christian from Regen Network. So welcome all of you. And I'm going to kick it off first by just having each of you take about 2 minutes to give an introduction to yourself, what you're working on, and what really inspired you to dedicate your best efforts to this cause. So we'll start with Luis.
Hi, everyone. I'm Luis. I'm the founder and CEO of Moss.Earth. I was going to ask for some slides, but I think it's okay. I've always worked in my career in what I call, quote unquote, the dark side of finance. I started my career working on investment banking. Then I was working a hedge fund management. I set up my own fund, and at some point, and I think it was the previous talk goes to the heart of the sort of existential crisis or questioning that I started to do. At some point, I started thinking, well, what am I doing with my life in terms of all I do is make rich people richer? And being Brazilian, I was getting increasingly frustrated and got to a point of extreme frustration with the deforestation and destruction not only of our planet, but especially of the Amazon forest. So I started reading a lot about climate change and realized, that people like Greta or activists are not being alarmist enough, about the future of the planet if we don't do anything about it, which very, briefly is or means that, in 50 years, we're going to be facing a world of all cities, by the shore underwater, reduction of food production by 50% or more, and the tropical zone of the world, being completely uninhabitable. So facing this, scenario, I said, well, nothing is more important than fighting climate change. So I left my job and started, looking into what would be the most effective solution. And in my opinion, and I thought at the time was, using or fomenting the carbon credit system as, a short-term solution. It's not the best solution, but it's the one we have right now that I think will work the fastest for us to combat climate change and pricing the externality of pollution. So with that in mind, with the problem of climate change in mind, and with the potential solution of fomenting and development of the carbon credit system, I founded Moss. Moss is basically a carbon credit intermediary. We buy, wholesale and sell retail. We're for like, an Amazon.com of carbon credits. And we add value in three ways. First, via project selection, then via the use of technology, geomonitoring and cutting edge technology in terms of forest reproduction and monitoring in 3D. And we put our carbon credits into blockchain. And we're proud, part of the Celo network. We have our carbon credit token, the MCO2 on the Celo network as the cMCO2. And finally, the third way we add value is via branding and distribution. We invest a lot in the dissemination and the education of people around the globe, people and companies on how carbon credits work. I'm very excited to be here and excited to discuss with the other invited guests. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thanks, Luis. And now I'll pass it over to Florian to talk about Wildchain.
Sure. Thanks, Amy. So I'm Flo. I'm director of Wildchain. So you asked what sort of inspired us to work in conservation, and for me there was a defining moment about 3 years ago when I saw this this famous photo by Amy Vitale of the last northern white rhino, Sudan, who died out 3 years ago. And it shows sort of the last moments of Sudan with the ranger. And that photo had a huge effect on me and motivated me to try to support wildlife conservation somehow. And then I looked into it more, and I learned that we're basically just at the beginning of a mass animal extinction. So we've lost now almost 70% of the world's wildlife since 1970. We have 32,000 species threatened with extinction. In the next decade, 1 million species could be threatened with extinction. So the big question is, how do we fund and how do we scale conservation funding? And the governmental spending and the philanthropy are not going to be enough. So to mobilize funding at scale, we really need to create completely new fundraising structures. And so we strategically looked for markets to tap into, and we quickly realized that the gaming market is kind of like a perfect fit because it's massive. There's 2.2 billion gamers, mobile gamers, and there's the global gaming market is $180 billion per year. And so with Wildchain, we are creating mobile games for good to raise funds for conservation. So in our first game, you become a digital conservationist, and you can digitally adopt endangered species and then raise them from baby to adult and create your very own wildlife sanctuary. So last month was actually the third anniversary of Sudan's death, the last male northern white rhino. And so we wanted to remember Sudan and capture Sudan's memory as an NFT. So today we actually launched, because it's Earth Day, we launched our first Celo NFT on Unifty. So if you go to Unifty or to Wildchain social media, then you can learn more about our NFT collection. I think my time is up, so thank you very much.
Amazing. I can't wait to check out the NFT after this session. And now I'll pass it off to Ben from Project Wren.
Great. Thank you, Amy. So I'm Ben, one of the 3 co-founders of Wren. And in a nutshell, what we're doing, we're designing the best experience for anyone to take climate action and offset their carbon footprint. And we started Wren in 2019, basically because myself and my co-founders were not scientists, we're not activists, we're not politicians, but we really wanted to be a part of this important fight against climate change, but we didn't feel like there was a way to get involved, and it felt difficult to understand what the best pathways were in terms of having a real impact. So we started Wren to essentially solve that problem for ourselves, and in building that for ourselves, hopefully build something that a lot of other people will resonate with. And we started essentially by sourcing a handful of high impact, high transparency climate projects from around the world. And yes, since launching, we've grown to about 70 plus countries, members in 70 plus countries. And today, this day last year, we partnered with Celo for the first time in order for Celo to become one of the first carbon neutral blockchains. So I'm very happy to be a part of this panel. And after a very challenging but important year, still a lot of important work left to do. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, and what Ben is mentioning is that since launch from mainnet last year, our protocol has actually been, part of our protocol is to offset the network's carbon footprint, all the operating energy consumption of our network. So it's been really great partnering with you and seeing that throughout the year. And now I'll hand it off to Christian from Regen.
Thanks a lot, Amy, and congratulations to all the other speakers here. Really impressed and thankful for the progress that you've made towards regenerating and revitalizing our planet. My name is Christian Shearer. I'm one of the co-founders at Regen Network. Basically, what Regen Network is doing is we're a full stack software development and planetary regeneration organization. Over the past 6 months, we've had some pretty major movements in our community. Just last week, we launched mainnet, Regen Ledger. Super excited to have that up with about 450 participants in Genesis, and continue to move that forward. We wrapped up a $10.5 million token sale round just in the last couple of months, and issued our first carbon credits with a group of regenerative ranchers doing rotational grazing grasslands management in New South Wales, Australia, and partnered with Microsoft, and Microsoft purchased all of those credits from us. So it's been a big 6 months for us. I would say basically what we're doing is not specifically focused on carbon, but focused on planetary regeneration, focused on ecological regeneration in general. I come from an ecological agriculture background. My co-founder, Gregory Landway, also comes from an ecological agriculture background. And we're focused on ecological ag because basically between farming and ranching, not even accounting for timber production, about 60% of the land surface area of this planet is managed by individual people, by individual families that are making management decisions about what to do on a year-by-year basis. And what we're building at Regen Network are the financial tools, the technological tools to help monitor, verify, and report on the ecological impact that those farmers and ranchers are making in their practices, be able to issue digital credits that relate to the ecosystem services they create, including carbon, and then reward them for that. And our theory of change is that as these farmers and ranchers are making their management decisions on a year-by-year basis, and they're looking around and saying, "Oh, those farmers down the road are getting paid better for what they're doing." What is it that they're doing? Well, it turns out that ecological agriculture is more profitable. Not only more profitable for your bottom line, but also for your family. You're just not going to be using as many chemicals. It's more profitable for your communities, more profitable for the rural landscape in general. So we're serving ecological finance in general at Regen Network. Glad to be part of the Celo community as well.
Amazing. All of you have such amazing announcements. Congrats on launching your mainnet at Regen,
Thanks so
NFT at your first NFT on Wildchain. Luis, congrats on the carbon token on the Celo network. This is all amazing news and great progress. So I wanted to just start out the panel with a very broad question of what do each of you feel in general the role of economics plays in how humans engage with the planet, and maybe the current incentive structures of our economic system, how is that incentivizing certain behaviors with our planet today? And whoever wants to kick it off.
Sure, if I may, I just wanted to say that I'm very honored to be here speaking with Ben from Project Wren. Project Wren was sort of the company that inspired Moss. So,
oh, I didn't know that.
on your awesome work, I'm very excited to be here, and we should speak more afterwards. I completely agree with Christian in that, and I'm a firm economic libertarian in the sense of believing that economic incentives should be in place, or that it's optimal for economic incentives to be in place for the fastest solutions or immediate solutions. And I agree with Christian. I think there's an important point to what Christian said about the fact that sustainable agriculture is more profitable, or has higher yields or higher productivity, and that's sort of what I believe that the carbon credit system creates. It creates an incentive, for example, for forestry projects, to get remunerated for their work. And if carbon credit prices are high enough, and that's our thesis at Moss, more people will buy land, in places like the Amazon forest, because the yield would just be too high if carbon credit prices are too high. Just to give a ballpark figure or a rough estimate, carbon credits for conservation, of forestry are generated at the rate of around 10 to 15 credits per year per hectare. So land in the Amazon is $100 right now, 150 US dollars. If you're generating, 10 credits per year, let's say, and that credit, at wholesale prices is at around, let's say, $6, $7, that land is generating a yield of 70% per year for 30 years. Obviously, that's way too high, right? And given that demand has been higher than supply, and that the trend for carbon credits is, I believe, of price appreciation, that yield tends to be higher. How does that yield come down? More people get attracted by that yield and buy land in the Amazon. And how is that a good thing? Well, that's a good thing, because the more people buy land in the Amazon, the higher the price of that land, and the greater the opportunity cost of a farmer in the northern region of Brazil. The opportunity cost of that person for slashing and burning that forest becomes higher, up to the point where it'll become more profitable, more worth it for that person to conserve and to protect the forest instead of slashing and burning, right? Like at around, we estimate that at around $400 to $500, that switch happens, right? And the person says, wow, this is more valuable to me, with the trees standing instead of for me to destroy and deforest this place. So that's what we're trying to foment, to have those incentives in place. And I do think, that I think, most of the panelists here said this to some extent, that we need to foment and to encourage, for these economic incentives to become stronger and stronger, so that we can protect the planet and combat climate change more effectively. So that's how I view that. There's the economic drive behind the work we're doing.
Yeah, just adding on to what you're saying there, some solutions like renewables and electric vehicles, it's already economically attractive, but a lot of solutions like forestry, without the proper incentives right now, it might be more economically attractive to slash and burn, and there are analogous sort of opportunities in a lot of other climate solutions. So that's the important work that I think a lot of us here are doing, is like, how do we align those incentives now rather than in 10 years when a lot of policy catches up, because these years are really important. And then also, like, on top of the economic incentive upfront, you also have like the co-benefits of a lot of these climate solutions where, okay, not only are you keeping the forest, but that also means that there's less air pollution, less costs around healthcare. So a lot of that is really abstract and is not a great upfront incentive to keep a forest in the ground. But if we are able to incentivize these solutions, then we have these great ripple effects for the next, many decades.
Yeah, thanks, Benjamin. That's like exactly right. The focus here isn't actually carbon, and the focus here isn't actually people getting paid more money. The focus here is for us to live in a world we all believe is possible, right? Kind of what Charles Eisenstein says. We want a world where people are connected to the natural systems and appreciate the life in the soil. At this moment, financial systems are an incredible lever. If we, for any reason, feel that we need to really quickly make huge changes on this planet, probably our capitalist system and financial incentives are the way to go about doing that. If we felt we had generations to do this, I would be advocating for social change, transforming everyone's mind and having that as the approach towards our ecological change. But I actually believe that we can use financial incentives to have people make a shift that they're financially motivated by, and then recognize the beauty in the living systems that they're working with. And I've seen this with conventional farmers that have switched to no-till agriculture. And all of a sudden they're like so curious about how the soil's working. It's working in a different way than they've ever experienced before. I've seen this in orchardists who switch from a conventional orchard system into more of an agroforestry type system, and then start to recognize other benefits other than just increased financial returns. So for me, the financial incentives are not just the fact that those families are going to make more money, but that it might lead them to a greater appreciation and connection with those natural systems.
Yeah, I agree totally with all the points. So for me, I think if we look at the last decade, then I'm not sure if sort of the old 20th century economic thinking, if that is really equipped to deal with the 21st century problems like the climate breakdown. And previously, governments mainly pursued GDP growth and that was often powered by natural resources and fossil fuels. And this has to push the Earth at beyond its limit at one point. So over the centuries, the economic thinking has evolved from household to city-state to nation-state. So I think the next step is to look at it from a planet level and to evolve the economic thinking also on a global level. So instead of only pursuing this sort of endless GDP growth, I think we need these regenerative economics that create a safe space, a safe and fair space for everyone.
Amazing. And so I love that all of you really touched on how we are incentivizing behavior on that ground level, and how are we getting funding to those individuals. So at the land steward level. But would also love, I know some of you have, you work with corporations who are buying your offsets, or you are directly consumer facing application. And I think at least at the corporate level, a lot of these organizations can get criticism for buying their way out of being sustainable. And so how do we also change behavior at that level through these models that you guys are developing at both the corporate and the consumer behaviors?
I would love to speak to that, because that's a question that we get all the time at Regen Network. People are like, yeah, but aren't you just building a system that lets corporations off the hook so they can continue to pollute and destroy the world, and then they just buy your offsets and they feel good about it? I totally understand and respect that perspective. And if that's how it goes, we have failed. Because every time a corporation dumps their pollution into the rivers or dumps their pollution into the airs, buying an offset does not make up for that, in my perspective. What carbon credits and offsets do is it aligns the CFO with the chief sustainability officer in the company. So a company like Microsoft puts a price on carbon and says, for all the carbon that we're going to produce throughout a year, at the end of the year, we're going to have to buy that carbon and offset it. And as the price of carbon goes up over time, the CFO is now pounding the table for the whole company saying, look, we need to reduce our impact as a company because we don't want to buy all those carbon credits at the end of the year. And as soon as you have the CFO pounding the table about the fact that we need to get much more sustainable, now you have real action in the company to make those changes. There's some great examples of this with Lyft or other organizations that have built in a carbon price since the beginning. So the goal is, in the end, that we're not selling any carbon credits because nobody needs to offset anything.
Yeah, we at Wren, our main focus is on individuals. But since day one, we've had businesses knocking on the door, either individuals that have subscribed to Wren and say, "Hey, can I do this for my business?" We spent a lot of time going back and forth on if we wanted to have a B2B tool and how we felt about this. I think Christian's approach is really solid, and we felt like there were a lot of good options out there like that for businesses. So our thinking was how can we shift and utilize a lot of what we're building for consumers to keep people engaged and thinking about reducing their footprint and staying in touch with the projects and seeing their impact. How do we translate that to companies? And essentially what we landed on is Wren as an employee benefit. So we don't actually offer a set, just pay us X dollars and you offset CO2 as a business. You have to offer it as an employee benefit and keep this climate conversation going with your employees. So now you have 100 people looped into this. There are Slack channels dedicated to it. There are work groups that break off and talk about what sort of climate action they're taking. And this doesn't work for companies with large supply chains where that is a big source of emissions, but for companies where, like travel and their office space and their employees, a big chunk of their carbon footprint, we sort of found this niche that we enjoy a lot. And it means the stuff we're building for consumers translates perfectly to companies as an employee benefit. But yeah, it's sort of like a compromise that we found at Wren.
Hi. I guess I'll jump in before Florian here. I think there are a bunch of like not myths but misconceptions out there about the way carbon credits work. And one of them is that there's a dichotomy or a choice to be made between growth and or profitability um, and pollution. Like if you cut down on pollution, you know that you're going to be sacrificing growth, right? Which is what the populists, right, and or just the populist parties across the globe have sort of argued in their crusade against environmentalism and carbon credits. And that's just simply not true. Europe or the European economy has basically doubled since 2008, and emissions have fallen by 25% because of the implementation of a carbon offsetting or the European ETS, the emission trading system. The same is true of California. The Californian economy has also almost doubled ever since they implemented the carbon credit system, and emissions have fallen by 15%. So that choice, this argument that companies can just pay for their pollution, and they'll just keep polluting as much as they are if they have to pay for it. That's just not true. Once they have to pay for it, pollution drops or emissions drop dramatically, and that's the data. So I think a lot of our work, and I think the fellow panelists here will agree, is to sort of we do at Moss, and I believe at the other companies here. A lot of our time is spent, busting myths like this one that, if companies can pay for their emissions, that they'll just keep emitting, a lot, or, that it won't drop significantly. And it's quite the contrary.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we're coming to the end of our time. I actually had a much longer list of questions and wish we had a lot more time to go over them. But want to thank you all for being here and for all your contributions to the Celo community. And definitely look forward to continuing that relationship and staying in touch. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.